I have a genuine question, and some of you will get it and some of you won't, but how do I stop feeling like Spencer Shay from iCarly as a 25-year-old woman? And I've had this problem for a few years now where I feel like I'm aging in reverse, and as I get older, I start acting younger or feeling younger than I actually am. And whenever I'm on TikTok and I see those iCarly edits and compilations, I just can't help but feel a sort of kinship with Spencer. I too make shitty art, don't know how to take care of my siblings, can't cook, and has kind of failed all career prospects. And I think this is a part of a bigger conversation that I've been wanting to have about specifically feeling out of place amongst other women and amongst other peers. I've always struggled with this, and as an adult, it becomes so apparent that there's like a very distinct difference, at least to me in my perception, between me and my same age coworker, where we live completely different lives. I believe I was meant to be a side character in a sitcom show, not the main character. I've never felt like the main character. Maybe when I was 9, 10, 11, and I was super annoying and egotistical, then yeah, sure, maybe. But I think I do better as the goofy side character that has occasional one-liners and occasional B plots. I think that's about as much as I can handle. Anything else, I can't assist with the narrative. I can't carry the weight of the show. I need to be a side character. Because think about it, if I was actually a part of a TV show, everything I do would make sense. I wouldn't need a serious full-time career. I wouldn't need a lifestyle that supports all of this shit in my room. It would just appear that way. It would just manifest that way. It wouldn't have to make logical sense. Where am I getting the money from? Who cares? It doesn't matter because I'm a side character and it's not about me. Don't question it. Maybe I have a rich aunt somewhere. It also wouldn't matter if I was to not be present during certain episodes or certain major life events of other people's lives. I could come and go as I please and it wouldn't really be a disruption. I would still be a character and it wouldn't mess with the continuity of everything. Continuity? Continuity. Continuity is the word I was looking for. Nobody would question why I rewore the same 5 outfits. It would just be, my standard default outfit, and that would be fine. I also think it would help me feel better if life was a TV show, because then all of my weird, questionable fashion choices would make sense, because, oh, they're just doing that, like how in Disney they would just make people wear whatever, even though it was ugly and weird, and no one would actually wear that on the street. But it's a TV show, so it doesn't matter, so we're gonna make Cece and Rocky dress like that. As a TV show character, I would be okay acting out of character or having days where I'm, not quite matching my characterization sheet, so to speak. I used to get really paranoid that people would call me out on being two-faced or not acting the same way in front of people, because I heavily rely on masking to get through every social interaction, and I'm hyper aware that I act differently in front of different groups of people, and I was afraid that somebody would call me out on that. But you get to season 3, 4, 5 of any TV show and you start to notice that the characterization doesn't really matter anymore and people are just doing and saying whatever they want. It kind of doesn't. Who cares? Who cares? Once I establish my character in the first season, I can do and say as I please and it won't really affect the narrative at all, especially if I'm a side character. Nobody gives a fuck about that. There was something about growing up in the 2000s and seeing this portrayal of like the older sibling always being like super cool but also kind of dumb and kind of useless. Like they would always like have a bedroom in the garage or be like in detention or skateboard and do bad things like steal from their parents or fight with the next door neighbor, like random shit like that. And I don't think I'm like cool or rebellious enough to be a Roderick. And I'm also not quite like anybody in Malcolm in the Middle except for maybe Malcolm, which is humiliating. Actually, I think I would be Dewey. Honestly, I do give Dewey, don't I? Oh. Like, I'm not quite the cool older brother because I'm not really that cool, but I'm also not the cool older sister because I'm not popular and I don't have friends. So I fall somewhere on the Spencer Shay spectrum where it's the older sibling that isn't really older at all. And I think it's funny because if you were to ask me 10 years ago, I would have said that I was the parentified child, much like Carly Shay. But as I've gotten older, I almost like grew out of that and started aging in reverse and just became, you know, more incompetent. And so I find myself now fitting more like the PJ Duncan side of the spectrum. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Because I would like to be a Teddy Duncan. Speaking of incompetent older siblings, Trina Vega technically falls in this category, but her issue was not being too whimsical. Her issue was being too vain and a little too ditzy. But I do think they're essentially two sides of the same coin. They're both the unreliable older sibling that's meant to look out for the younger sibling, and they fail miserably at their job. And half the time they end up getting in shit. Except the thing is Trina she's conniving and manipulative. And I love that for her. She's my favorite character. I think she's fantastic. I think she's one of the more interesting characters in Victorious. She's one of my favorite Victorious characters, but I would definitely not compare myself to her. I don't think we're even remotely in the same ballpark. Something that's kind of irritating to me is we do not have a lot of stupid older sister representation out there. It's always an older brother who is the bum, the dropout, the family black sheep, the family scapegoat. You know, we don't have a lot of girl failures out there to identify ourselves with. So I find myself having to rely on some stupid teenage boy to be my representation instead of it being an actual woman in her 20s going through a flop era. I think that's the representation that we're missing and we're needing, and I would love to see it, honestly. I think even Alex Russo, who was technically like the bad child in her family, she was always painted as cool and rebellious, and that's not the same as being the flop child, because the flop child of that family was the youngest brother. What's his name? It was Justin, Alex, and JT Austin. His name wasn't JT Austin. The actor's name is JT Austin. What is JT Austin's character? I forget. It'll come back to me like in 5 hours, but his character, he was the flop child, where he was obviously stupider and not as talented and not as important and didn't have important plot lines and stories going on. I think maybe the only flop older sister character is probably more like sitcom-y shows, like Modern Family, maybe? I've only seen like 2 episodes of Modern Family, so that's a guess. But I think, isn't there a female character there who kind of sucks? Or what's the other character? The like nerdy girl that's in another show. I don't remember. I will be honest, I've watched like 3 sitcoms in my life because most of them I don't find funny. Most of them I find background noise and I will turn them off. But I will be rewatching Victorious on a yearly basis, so I don't know how that makes sense. Anyways, that was my rant for today, I guess. Please don't say anything about my growing out undercut. It's gotten really embarrassingly long, and I don't plan on reshaving it. I'm trying to grow it out, so it's going to look really goofy for a bit, and you're going to have to pretend you don't see it. Anyways, thank you for watching, and please recommend me more flop girl failure older sister archetypes, because I genuinely feel crazy and feel like I'm the only one who is going through this kind of quarter life crisis where I feel like Spencer Shay. That can't be normal. That can't be like an actual phenomenon that people go through, right? Like this has to be, there has to be an explanation why I feel like this, right? I wonder what character I'm going to feel like next. And I really hope it's one that is super cool and sexy and mature and has a high paying job. Alright, that's enough.